Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to video number 4 of our React Redux Django app. So in this video I want to do some error handling. Now, if the way that this is right now, if I try to submit without putting a name in an email, it doesn't work. And if I open up my console here, it's going to show us that we're getting a 400 response, which is an error. Basically it's a bad request. It means that the data that we sent is not formatted correctly because the name and the email are required. If we put an email that's already in the database, we'll also get a 400. So we're going to get these responses back, and what I would like to do is have them run through an errors reducer and get put inside of our state. That way we can pick them up in other components. Now I want to have a component that's dedicated to catching these errors and displaying them to us. So we'll create a component called alerts. And instead of just putting like a bootstrap alert or something like that, I'm actually going to use a third-party package called React Alert. And if I show you the demo here, let's go ahead and click this button and it'll show us the demo, and you can see that it pops up either down here, you can put it wherever you want, and then it just fades away, and it can have success, errors, info, and so on. And you can see you can change I could put it on the top if I wanted to, like that. So that's what I want to do, is I want to use this, and there's a few things we need to do in order to use this. Okay, there's a couple dependencies. We have the React Alert itself, we have the React Alert template, and we also need React Transition Group. So we need to install those three things, and then we bring in the provider, the alert provider, and we wrap it around everything, just like we did with the Redux provider. And then any component we want to use it with, we just import with alert, and we just wrap the default component, the export, in with alert. And then we can simply do this.props.alert.show or .error, whatever it is we want to use. Okay, so that's what we'll be doing. So I'm going to jump into my terminal here, and let's go ahead and cut this out. And let's do npm install react-alert. We also want react-alert-template-basic. I think that's it. Let me double check. Template basic, yeah. And then we also need React-transition group because it's a dependency of React Alert. So let's install those things. Okay, then we'll go ahead and we'll run npm run dev again. All right, and let's minimize this. Okay, now in our app.js, like I said, we need to create our alert provider. So we're going to do that. We're going to bring it in right here. Let's go import provider. Now we already have a provider from React Redux, so I'm going to use an alias. I'm going to say as alert provider. And that's going to be from React-alert. Okay, so we also want to bring in the template, so we're going to bring in alert template from react-alert-template-basic. So now that we brought those in, let's go down here and let's create some options. So I'm going to put a comment here. We'll say alert options, say const alert options, which is just going to be an object, and we're going to set a timeout of 3000 milliseconds, so 3 seconds, and then the position, I would like to have it top center. And if you want it to be different, that's fine. So down here, we want to keep the Redux provider as the outermost provider, and in here we'll put alert provider. Okay, we want to just wrap the whole fragment here. Now this alert provider is going to take in the template. Okay, so we want to pass in alert template. We also want to pass in the options. So we're just going to go like this, and we're going to use the spread operator and say alert options, like that. Okay, so we'll save, and now we should be able to use this within any component. However, I'm going to dedicate an alerts component to displaying these things. So in components, oh, you know what? I forgot to delete that earlier. So I'm going to recreate that. So in components layout, I'm going to create a new file called alerts.js. Okay, and this is going to be a class-based component. And in order to use this, in order to use the alerts, we have to import with, what is it? With alert. And it's going to be from react-alert. And then down here in the export, we just have to say with alert and then wrap the component name. All right, and I'm also going to use a fragment here. Okay, and change this to fragment. Okay, because we're not actually rendering anything in the UI. It's going to be that pop-up, and the way that we basically call that is with this.props.alert.show or .success, whatever it is that we want to use. So I'm going to test it out by adding component, let's say component did mount, which will just run as soon as the component mounts, and we'll test it out by saying this dot props dot alert dot show, and let's say it works. Oops. All right, so I'm going to save this, and then let's reload. Oh, I'm sorry, we need to bring in the alerts to the main app component. So in here, let's go right under the dashboard. We'll bring this down, and we want to bring in from layout/alerts, and we'll go ahead and we'll put this right below the header like that. Okay, so now let's save it and reload, and we get it works. So as soon as that component mounts, it runs this right here, and it shows us the little pop-up. All right, now what I want to do is have an errors reducer so that if we have any error from our server, I mean, right now, if we look at our leads action, like let's say for add lead, we're just console logging this ERR, which doesn't give us much. It just tells us the response in the console. I want to actually send the message and the status into an errors reducer. So under reducers, I'm going to create a new file called errors.js. And we need to bring this into the index.js, which is our root reducer. So let's say errors, and we want to pass that into the combine reducers like that. Okay, we can close that up. Now we're going to have a new type. So in actions types.js, let's do get errors. So get errors. Okay, now in the reducer here, the errors reducer, we're going to import get errors, and that's going to be from the types file, so actions/types, and then we're going to have an initial state, which will be an object, which will have a message, that's going to be an object, and status, which will be set to null by default. All right, and then of course we need to just export default function, and this will take in state, which will be by default the initial state, and then an action. Okay, just like the leads reducer. And we want to run a switch. We want to test the action.type. Okay, let's test for the case of get errors. And if get errors, then we want to return, as far as the state goes, we want MSG, which is going to be action.payload.msg, and status will be in the payload as well, so action payload.status. All right, and then we'll just have a default that will just return the state. All right, so let's save that, and let's go into our actions, our leads action. And instead of doing this, and I just want to show you, to get the exact message, we can do error response dot data. So if I save this and I open up my console here and I reload and I just try to submit, you can see we get this object that has email with an array with any messages that pertain to it, which is this field may not be blank. We also have name. This field may not be blank. Now, I'm not very fond of the way they show these, like having it be an array and it just says this field for all of them. I wish it said email field may not be blank. That would be a little more easy to handle, but we have to work with whatever we get back. So that's why the message is an object. Okay. So we can get the status with error response status. So what I'll do here is on the catch, let's actually create an object here with a message that's going to be equal to the error.response.data, and then the status is error.response.status. Okay, so we have this errors object. Now I want to dispatch. I want to say dispatch the type of get errors. I don't think I brought that in, did I? Yeah, I did. Okay, so make sure you bring in get errors at the top. So get errors, and then let's send as a payload that errors object that I created right here. Okay, so now we'll save that, and when we get an error, it should get added to our state. So let's go to the Redux tools. Okay, so Redux tools, I want to make this a little bigger, and let's reload. And if I go ahead and submit this, you'll see that the get errors action runs, and down here you'll see that in the message we have that name and email. This field may not be blank, and we have the status of 400. So the errors are now in our state. Okay, so now we want to catch those errors in the alerts component. So remember, in the leads, we got the leads from the state. In the alerts, we want to get the errors from the state. So let's go to alerts.js, and remember, if you want to work with Redux inside of a component, you have to bring in connect. So let's say import connect. I'm sorry, we need to wrap this. It's not a default, so we need to do that. And that's going to be from React Redux. And the errors we bring in are going to be props, so we also want to bring in prop types. Let's do impt. Okay, and then I think that's good. So down here, we're going to create our map state to props. So let's say const map state to props, and this is going to be an arrow function that takes in the state, and then we want to get, let's say, errors. We'll say error, and we want to set it to state dot, and then the reducer that we want, which is errors. Okay, so this will any errors that are in the state are now going to be props. So we can say this dot props dot error, and that'll give us the message and the status and so on. Now remember, down here we have to export default connect. So we're going to say connect, open up a set of parentheses, and also surround this with parentheses. And inside connect, we want to do map state to props. All right, and then let's add the prop type. So static prop types, and let's see, we have error, and that's going to be, let's say, prop types, and this is going to be an object, and let's say is required. Oops. All right. So let's see. Now we're not going to render anything. We're going to keep that as is. But this component did mount, I'm going to change to component did update. And what this means is that when we get a new prop, such as the error, then this is going to run. Okay. So if I save this and I reload, let's see what's going on here. Maximum update depth exceeded. Component repeatedly calls set state inside. Component will update. Oh, let's get rid of that. Okay, so what we need to do here, this component did update. It'll take in previous props. Okay, and then we want to just make sure that the props have changed. That's why we got that error message. So we're going to say if, and we want to check the current props. So I'm actually going to pull, because we have access to this.props.error. So I'm going to use a little destructuring, and I'm going to pull out error. Let's pull out error from this.props. And also alert, because remember it's this.props.alert. So we'll pull both of those out, and we're going to say if error, meaning the props, this.props.error, is not equal to the previous props dot error, then we want to do something. So for now, I'm just going to say this dot. Actually, I don't even have to do this dot props. I can just say alert, because we pulled that out. We can say alert dot success, or actually we might as well do error, because there is an error. And we'll say there is an error. Okay, so now if I reload, nothing happens, but if I submit, we get there is an error. Now the next thing we want to do here is check to see what error we're actually getting. Now we know that there's a message.name, there's a message.email. So let's do this. Let's say if error dot msg, okay, because remember the state, if we look at the Redux tools here and we look in the state, there's a message. So in message we can have name and email. These are possible errors. So we'll say if message.name, then let's alert dot error. All right, now we could put a custom message here, like name is required. Oops, I forgot to put my, hold on, what did I do here? I've got my closing parentheses over here. So we're checking to see if error.message name, if so, then alert error name is required. Now let's save that and let's try it. We'll reload and we'll submit, and we get name is required. Okay, we can also search, we can also check for the email, and we'll say email is required. Okay, so we'll reload and submit. We get name is required, email is required. Now the problem with this is we're hard coding the message. Now if I do, let's say John Doe, and I try to do what did I do? JDoe at Gmail, which is already a registered email. If I go ahead and submit, we get email is required. Now that's not the correct message. It should be down here. If we look in our state, it gives us the message, which is right here. This email already exists. You can't really read it, but that's what it says. So we need to take this and put it into the message instead of hard coding it. Now it's a little difficult because this is an array, right? It's an array, so it's not just a simple string that we can output. So that what we'll have to do here, or what I'm going to do, there's different ways you can do this stuff, but I'm going to put in some backticks, and I'm going to put the name of the field, so name, colon, and then open up this syntax so we can put in a variable, and we're going to say error.msg.name, which remember is an array, right? It gives us an array, but I'm going to use the .join method, which will actually turn it into a string. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing for email. So let's go in here. I just copied that. I'm going to paste this in. I'll change this to email and change this to email. So now, if we try this again, if we submit, we get name, this field may not be blank. Email, this field may not be blank. That's coming from the server. And now if I try to do JDoe and I submit, we get email, lead with this email already exists. Okay, so it's going to give us the correct error rather than us hard coding it. It's just a little weird because it comes in as an array, so that's why I'm using join to basically turn it into a string. All right, so let's see. We may get a message error too, so we might as well put that in here. So I'm just going to copy this, paste that in, and just change this to message, message, and then message. Okay, so that will take care of all the errors from that. All right, now I'd also like to be able to say, like, if we delete a user, I'd like it to say, or delete a lead, I'd like it to say lead deleted or lead added, something like that. So I think that what we should do is create a messages reducer as well, and have a get messages that we can catch here, just like we do with the errors, as well as a create message so that we can create a message whenever we want. So let's go to reducers and let's create a new file called messages.js. And I'm just going to copy what we have in the errors reducer and paste that in, and we're going to have a type called get messages and create message. Okay, and let's see, as far as the state, it's just going to be empty by default. And then let's see, initial state, action type, so get messages. All that's going to do is return the payload. So we're going to directly return action.payload because it's just going to be a string. Or I'm sorry, it's going to be an object. And then let's see, for create messages, and I'll create these types in a minute. So create message, we're going to return, and let's just say state equals action.payload. So we're just going to set the entire state to whatever we pass in, which will be an object, a message object. Okay, so let's save that. Let's go to types, and let's copy this down a couple times, and we'll do get messages. And let's do create message. Okay, save that. Now we have to add this to our root reducer. Messages. All right, let's save that. So let's see. Let's create in actions a new file called messages, okay, or messages.js. And from here is where we want to add our create message action. So we're going to import create message, import create message from types, and let's say export const create message. It's going to take in a message parameter, and all we're going to do here is return. We're going to return directly. We're not making any asynchronous requests with Axios or anything right like that, so we don't have to pass in dispatch. We can directly return the type of create message and the payload, which will be the message object. Okay, so that's it. Now, where I would like to create a message is, like I said, when we delete a lead or when we add a lead. So let's go into leads, the actions, the lead actions, and let's see, how are we going to do this? Let's bring in up top here. Let's bring in that create message action that we just created. So we'll say import create message from /messages, because when I want to create a message, I want to do it from the action. I don't want to have to do it from the component. I don't want to bog the components up with all these create messages. So down where we delete a lead right here, we can actually dispatch that create message. So let's see, we'll go right in the then before we dispatch delete lead, because we know it already happened on the server. So let's say dispatch, and we can dispatch the method, the action directly by saying create message, and it takes in an object, which is a method, which is a message. So I'm going to say lead added, and then the text I want to display is just lead added. Okay, so again, this is going to call create message, which is in our message action right here. It's going to dispatch or return the create message type to the reducer, which is right here. It's going to set the state to that message, and get messages is going to return that. Now this get message we want to call from the alerts, because we want to be able to get any messages that are created. So let's go to alerts.js, and we already did the connect thing and all that. We just want to go down here and add the messages or message, and we want to add the state.messages. All right, that way we have access to them. Because if I save this and I reload, if we look in our Redux tools, if we look at state, we have messages in our state, which is just an object. Okay. Now, once we delete one of these, it should add the message to our state. Now we're catching that here as a prop, so it'll be this.props.message. Let's actually add that up here as a prop type. So I'm going to just copy this down, and it's going to be an object. So message. And then we'll check for it just like we did the errors. So I'm going to add in here message, so we can take that from the props, and then we just want to check to see if it's changed, just like we did with the error. So let's say if message is not equal to the previous props.message, then let's check for certain messages, such as delete lead, which we just added. All right, so let's do if message dot, what did I call it? Where are we? Want to go to leads, the actions. So I called it lead. Oh, this is the delete. It should be lead deleted. Or let's call it delete lead. And we'll say lead deleted. All right, so we're creating a message called delete lead. Now back in the alerts, let's check for that. We'll say message dot delete lead. Then let's go ahead and alert. Now this is a success, not an error, so we're going to say alert dot success, and we can just simply output message dot delete lead, because it's going to contain that string that we added right here, lead deleted. So let's save that, and let's go back here, make this smaller. Let's reload this, and let's delete one of these. So let's actually just add one just to delete. Submit. Okay, so now if I delete, whoops, I just deleted two, and we get lead deleted. Okay, now let's do the same thing for when we add a lead. So back in our actions, our lead actions, let's copy this dispatch we just did, and let's go down to add lead. And as soon as the response comes, we know it's successful. So we're going to say add lead, and let's say lead added. Okay, so now in alerts, we can simply check for add message.add lead. Okay, and then we're going to alert success add lead. So let's save that. Let's reload, and let's see, let's add back Jane Williams. Contact Jane on Tuesday. Submit, and we get lead added. Now, one thing that I just realized is we don't even use the get messages, so we don't need that. We're just creating the message, and then that's changing the state and sending it down. So we can actually get rid of that. This get messages here, we don't need to bring it in, and we can delete it from types as well. I think I had planned on using it, but we actually don't need it. So let's just reload and make sure that this still works. I don't see why it wouldn't. Okay, lead added, good. Lead deleted, good. All right, so let's see. One last thing I want to do. When we submit a lead, I want this to clear. So let's go to our form component, which is, let's see, we got a lot of files here. So leads form.js, and after we call this .props.add lead, let's just say this .set state, meaning the component state, this stuff up here, and let's set name to nothing, email nothing, message nothing. All right, so we'll save that. Let's try it out. Okay, so now it clears up. Good. All right, so I think that we're just about ready to move on to authentication. Now, if that whole message thing confused you, I mean, it's not, you don't need to do that, but I think it's nice to be able to just create a message wherever you want inside your action creator, and then just catch it in the alerts component and display it. All right, so I think that's it. In the next video, we're going to start to implement authentication. Now, we're going to obviously need a login page, a register page, so we're going to be using React Router. Also, we need to start dealing with the back end as well. We need to make it so that we can't access any of these leads if we're not logged in. We can't add a lead. We can only access our own leads. So we're going to be adding a new app to our Django backend called Accounts, where we add all that API stuff. All right, so that's it, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.